Okay, good evening, everybody. Welcome to Thursday Garden Chat, the weekly public service broadcast from Garden Masterclass. Annie is in Bath tonight, incommunicando. So I've got Richard Court with me.
Hi, everybody.
In case we need him, another pair of hands on deck. Richard is one of the garden staff at Hestercombe Garden in Somerset. So in terms of what we got coming up, we've got one more webinar from our winter webinar season coming up next week. I think it's the Tuesday, the 7th. The final episode from Chris Failharbour of Chanticleer in Pennsylvania, talking about summer in the garden in Chanticleer. If you've not seen any of the previous ones, these are rather wonderful seasonal looks at this extraordinary garden, both at the practical tasks that the garden staff undertake to get ready for summer, but also what summer delivers for the Chanticleer garden. So that's a webinar next week. Now we've got a lot of live events organised, and we are doing a special offer for this May bank holiday. Anyone who's had our newsletter will have seen that there's a special offer discount for a 20% discount on live events. So if you are interested in any of our events, workshops, garden walks, etc. this summer, and you want to see if any of them have got a discount and you're not on our mailing list, get on our mailing list ASAP so we can get the newsletter out to you to tell you about what's on offer. The other offer we've got this May Day weekend is our films Wildside, The Story of a Garden, and Dyffryn Vennant, A Garden in Wales. They're both on offer until Tuesday. So two rather lovely lyrical films, very different actually, but both gardens we've chosen to document. They're available, and you can find out more about them simply by going to our homepage. Indeed, to cut things short, the special offer we have on live events, that's also on our homepage. So do check out the website. If anyone here is new to us, we have a membership which gives you discounts and podcasts and things, and available to the archive, which is not available to non-members. And we've got an absolutely enormous archive now of these events once we take them off YouTube, as well as, of course, of our recorded webinars. If you just want to keep in touch, then sign up for the email newsletter. This year is the kind of, I don't know quite what you call it, the sort of not exactly centenary, because it's 150 years since the birth of the Dutch garden designer and landscape architect Mien House, and we're doing an event at the Mien House Garden in Eastern Holland in I think the 27th of June. That'll be a rather special day to celebrate a very special lady with who's had a really enormous impact on garden design and garden architecture in the Netherlands, and very much a modernist figure. So do check that out. Now this year is also the, whatever we're calling it, centenary and a half of the incredibly influential German gardener, nurseryman, breeder and writer, Karl Förster. Förster may well go down in history as the most influential gardener of the 20th century. There's an exhibition on all summer in Potsdam Town Hall, just outside Berlin. It's apparently a really rather wonderful exhibition. They were going to put on a conference, but then they ran out of money, or they said they didn't have enough money, and the Karl Förster Foundation were a bit bureaucratic. And so I said, well, why don't we organize an online conference? And they, somewhat to my alarm, said, okay, yes. So that's coming on this autumn. It'll be a real, really important thing for us to celebrate the life and the influence of this incredibly influential and very interesting and perhaps rather controversial man. So we'll be making more announcements about that as we firm things up. So I think now this evening we should introduce our guests, Kim and Rob Hurst, who I think I first met. It would have been probably 1989 or 1990. I used to have a small nursery business just outside Bristol, and for 3 years I had a small stand at the Chelsea Flower Show, and it's there that I met Kim and Rob. We were sort of cordoned off into a kind of, I don't know what the word is, ghettoized, put into a kind of corner for kind of possibly slightly dodgy or alternative or unknown exhibitors. We were there with Carol Klein, who was certainly in that category at the time and has arguably remained so. We had a lot of conversations about the problematic logistics of doing Chelsea as a very small business. And I've met up with Kim and Rob many times since, and we're delighted to have them this evening. This year is the last year of running their nursery, the Cottage Herbery. So it seems like a really nice opportunity to look back at their business, how it's developed over the years. And they are in Worcestershire. Not Herefordshire, as my dear business partner flagged up last week. Welcome to Worcestershire. Kim, do you want to start off? Do you want to tell us about how you got involved with plants and gardening?
Yes. Well, it's one of those usual things, Noel. It was the grandfather. My grandfather was very much into gardening, and he grew all the veg, gladioli, dahlias, ran a pigeon loft as well for the family, and this was all in a garden, a back garden in Smethwick, and he lived on the one side of the street and we lived on the other side of the street with pigs and chickens in our back garden. And
it's all no real kind of working class credibility, I must say.
Yes, it does. Yes. So much so that they were founding men, my dad and my grandfather, but their passion lay with the land. And I would migrate across the street to spend a lot of time with my grandfather, and that's where my love of gardening first started. But with the actual growing of what I wanted to grow originally and what Rob joined me in growing, it all started with a school project, an exam project.
Really?
What was CSEs then? You know, we hadn't even, I was in that time of CSEs, and I had one book, Noel, and it was this book, and this was what set the pattern for my life, basically.
Who was the author?
It was Rosemary Hemphill.
Rosemary Hemphill, great name for a herbalist, actually.
Yes, and she published it in 1972, which is when I did this project and this exam. And this was for domestic science. And domestic science, I had to cook things with all the herbs as well. And my domestic science teacher said to me, this is not very good, Kim, because there's not enough on this subject. Never will there be enough on this subject. And my mother took great pleasure in telling her over the years that actually I made a career out of it. And that was the start of it. That was the beginning, the first taste of it.
Well, I think that probably answers the question, because I sent my list of questions to Annie to say, and her comment was, why herbs?
Yes, why herbs?
Well, answered that one. Yes, right. You started off with herbs and you've carried on with herbs.
But the interest has spread, though, you know, over the years it's gone into different areas. So that,
and all these years later, she's still learning about herbs.
So how come you wanted to or were able to turn this into a business?
So, basically, I was working on the farm. And I wanted to grow the plants as well, but had come from my grandfather as well, because that's how we ended up with the farm. He was a horticulturist. He actually started Alton Glasshouses, which in the 60s was a very big glasshouse company shipping
Yeah.
glasshouses all over Britain. So
Right.
the money that he made from the glasshouses, he used to buy the farm. And
Oh, right. Mm.
on the site, they made glasshouses, but there was a nursery, and I used to help him grow his fuchsias and tomatoes. So then he bought the farm, and it was a completely mixed farm.
Yeah.
But as you know, it had got hops on it. And
Yeah.
the hops then played a very big part in the cottage herbery, because at the time, all of the waste from the actual machine, not spent hops, like spent hops are from breweries. This was the green leaves and the shoots.
Right. Yeah.
It was the string from the machine as well. And that was rotted down on the farm, and that's the compost that we were growing the plants in when we very first started in the
Right.
70s.
Oh gosh. Wow. Yes.
Well,
Yes.
After 10 years or so, we were growing so many plants, we hadn't got enough compost, and got the clue. The string in the compost was coir, and that's how we ended up making the coir compost business, fertile fibre, mainly just for our own use.
Right. Oh, I see. Right.
So
Right.
we made it for our own use, and it then turned into a business, which actually turned into a monster, and we had to choose either stay with the plants or go with the compost, and we sold the compost business. But when I sold it, I'd got to stay helping him for 3 years, and I sold it in 2004, and I still help him now.
Right. Right. Yeah.
We still use it for
Yeah.
everything, and that was how the farm worked in with the cottage herbery, and how it sort of linked everything together with the growing and the farming and the horticulture side of the growing medium.
Yeah. Yeah. So this was imported coir, was it, or was it a
Yes,
waste?
yeah, because we had to take the plunge. The first coir that we received, I met a man at Heathrow Airport,
Yes.
car park, and he opened his suitcase and gave me five little brown bricks, which I
Yes.
brought home to try. And
Yeah.
he said, if you need any more, you're going to have to buy a container.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
and we worked it out at the time. I think it was 12 years worth of potting compost that we got to buy in one go.
Gosh, yeah.
Crikey. Wow.
So we took the plunge and went with it, and then it developed from there.
Yeah.
So-
Yeah.
And it gave us something to grow. But of course, because we were using it, and at the time we were on all the big show circuits, everybody asked us, what are you using? Where are you coming from? And all this business. And it turned into a business that way. We just started supplying.
Right. Yes. Yes. I mean, do you think there's a sustainability issue about shipping material for compost kind of halfway around the world, or do you think it coir played a particular role in kind of shifting from peat to other peat alternatives?
At first, when the demand wasn't that big for the coir, all of the coir came on empty ship space.
Right. Oh, I see. Yeah.
Unless it came on empty ship space. So basically, each container that came back because we started this end of the 80s, during the early 90s, every container that come, that boat would have sailed anyway, with or without that.
I see. Right. Yes.
Now there's a much bigger demand for it, so it's being shipped. But also we worked out, I know it's different now because some of the ships aren't coming through the Suez Canal. If they come through the Suez Canal, the amount of diesel needed to ship that container from Sri Lanka to Britain is less than the lorry that drives it from the port to Hereford, where
I can imagine. I mean, shipping around the world is very sustainable. Yeah. Interesting.
And the quantities, and of course, because it's dried and it's compact,
yes,
the amount of material that you get out, because they come in 40-foot container. We used to have 20-foot containers and have the little briquettes.
Yes.
In big containers. Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah. Now these kind of sustainability audits are a fascinating business, I think.
Yeah.
Great. Okay. So you started. So when did you start Cottage Herbery? What year?
1976.
Well, it was
1976.
actually 1974,
Yay.
very first started.
Yeah, when we officially,
We
it's
we named
1974.
it from 76, but
Oh,
we
God.
started growing
Yes.
veg, didn't we?
Yeah.
So obviously you were really into herbs. What were you aiming at the time? I mean, I think it was there were not many herb nurseries around, and presumably you felt there was a gap in the market and you were going to fill it.
Mm. Yeah, well, yes and no, because what happened was because the interest was in actually growing the herbs. What do you do with them when they start piling up? You know, you've got to have an outlet for this, and so the business kind of a bit like Rob with the compost. The business kind of started to evolve, and because at the time there wasn't many outlets to sell your plants, and especially herbs, because they were still kind of on that edge.
Yes.
So we started doing like little craft fairs and small agricultural shows. We would rock up with a bright blue and orange tent and my mother and father's paste table and set up a little stall and, you know, sell our plants for that, tell people all about it. Because that was the other thing about the herbs, you know, was all of the stories that were attached to each of the plants that we were.
Yes.
All of their uses, all of their folklore as well. Many different things, you know, you can dye with them, you can have fragrance from them. All of that was fascinating, especially to me. Rob liked the growing side of it. And from there, we actually got invites to other places and to actually go to different shows. But when anybody sort of asked us, would you come and speak about the herbs, we would actually go. And you know, go to places and put our stall up and talk about our plants, and that's actually how we started as a nursery. And I realized I really want to do this, so I was actually working full time and at weekends doing the herbs, and I just wanted to get out of that and start in the herbs. And we would spend weekends. We were very unusual, actually, if you think about it. Most people were doing this, that, and the other, but we got so into growing the plants and enjoying the plants that that's how we started to get working towards actually making it into a full-time business.
And so we got to know people. I was at agricultural college up in Shrewsbury, and there was Barbara Keane.
Barbara Keane
at Valeswood Nursery, just down the road from the agricultural college. So we there and see her collection of herbs and things, which got us more interested. And then she told us about Madge Hooper, who in actual fact was closer to here than to the one in Shrewsbury.
Yes.
Madge Hooper from Stoke Lacey Nursery.
So, and then there was another lady as well, wasn't there?
Called Ruth Thompson, who ran Oak Cottage, and they were the kind of three people that really sort of gave us the deeper interest in growing.
So my memory was you established a range of herbs really quite early on. It was very extensive. You were doing quite a lot of varieties that other people weren't doing. Could you tell us about some of the sort of variety innovations you were
I mean, at the time, there weren't many people actually bringing in the more wilder side of the herbs, and we did a lot of that. We decided that we wanted to grow more of the wild herbs, like, you know, the different types of ajuga, bugles. We like growing sort of the different woundworts as well. We bring in things like the different stachys to grow betonies, all of those sort of things that other people weren't doing, and symphytums as well. There was with symphytums, different comfreys that we grew, and then we got on to growing monadas as well. There were other things that, like foxgloves. If we started on, you know, with just ordinary purpureum, and then we would then go on, you know, to get lanata, ferruginea, and so it developed from that. You know, we would actually start to grow more.
If Kim found a plant that she liked, she would then have to get the whole collection.
Oh, right, yes.
It's one of those things. As soon
Yeah.
like it was anything, if we found that we liked a few nice salvias. So I think sometime during the 90s we had a complete polytunnel that was full of different salvias.
But we were
Yes.
a bit before our time with that, Noel,
Yeah.
unfortunately.
Yes,
People
yes.
were buying them then. So it was a difficult thing to actually sell at the time, you know. Yeah, it was interesting in which direction we would take it as we started to grow and to do more and more
So,
things.
and as we got onto as we started doing more of the big shows in the mid 90s and into the 2000s, when we were doing all the really big shows, we then brought in more cottage garden plants as well.
Right, yeah.
But we used the links between the herbs to make, you know, what are classed as cottage garden plants. A lot of them have links to herbal plants as well.
Right, yes.
Mm.
So amongst the herbs you were growing, were there any particular kind of discoveries, I think, particularly for sort of culinary use, something that you felt that, you know, you were actually cooking with and using that was unusual and that no one else was using?
Well, we were very interested in with what Joy Larkham was doing at the time, and
Oh, right, yes.
yeah, and we got to know Joy actually
Yes.
through compost, and you know, we would sort of converse with Joy as well about different plants, and so we sort of followed Joy and what she was sort of bringing to the table, so to speak, and we would seek out certain plants. You know, I mean, there was a lot of things that she did, you know, the Japanese parsley, mitsuba, and there was an interesting thing with mitsuba. We had Bob Brown's come across from a plant fair one day, holding this plant in the air, shouting, "I've got a weed for you." And it was actually the purple form of
Right, yes.
Petunia.
And he wasn't, was he
Yeah,
growing it, selling it?
Can't sell weeds, but you can. So you have it and you sell it, and we've sold it ever since.
But that was, you know, the black mitsuba, that was an interesting plant to actually get a hold of. You know, there were different sort of things. I was just trying to think.
Yeah, because there was a lot of stuff that we looked at, and we were either given by different exhibitors or we grew from seed that back in the late 90s or the 2000s was classed as really unusual.
Oh,
but
yes. Yeah.
now, like Vietnamese coriander, when we started selling that, everybody went, well, right, you know, it wasn't a coriander, as with a lot of the herbs. The common name completely tells the wrong story of what the plant is. But like Vietnamese coriander, we then is now quite widely available. But when we first started taking it to the shows, it was it wasn't there. We were the only ones selling it.
Yeah.
But what's the Latin name on that one? The Vietnamese
Persicara odorata.
Oh, right. Okay. Yes. Okay. Yes.
And the other persicaria that we got hold of was red hot water pepper, and it was Hydropiper rubra, and that has been a really wonderful plant. And you know, some of these plants are actually really, really attractive, so that they go so well mixed in with herbaceous borders as also.
Yes.
So some of our sort of displays that we were doing, we were trying to sort of emphasize that, you know, mixing up things together, which didn't actually tick some of the criteria boxes, but this is how we garden, and you know, we want to show this, and being organic, we mix things up for the fact of, you know, less pests that were going to be you know, attacking the plants. We wanted to show that, you know, biodiversity.
Companion planting side of it makes a big difference. The more you mix them, the less
pests and diseases that
you get on specific plants, and that.
And if you do get a pest, the less likely you are.
In the picture now, the nasturtium there, we always grew nasturtiums as a sacrifice plant, because they always got the pest before anything else.
Oh, right. Okay.
Well, she
Yeah.
chopped it off and got rid of it.
Yeah.
So, like our daughter India used to, when they were covered in aphids, would pick them off and float them down the stream. So somebody downstream got them.
Yes, yes, yeah. But I think this whole concept of the edible element of the stuff we grow ornamentally, we really, we all kind of know about it, but I think we've got an awful long way to go in exploiting that. I mean, so many garden plants are actually edible.
Yes.
That I just love the idea of sort of integrating your perennial planting with stuff you can eat. I mean, I know, yeah. I have tried hosta leaves dutifully and not been won over, but persicaria. I mean, I think any persicaria is edible. So yes. We hope that you are enjoying this recording from Garden Masterclass's Thursday Garden Chat programme. We started doing this in April 2020 during the first COVID lockdown, when we did it 5 days a week for 2 months, which was a wonderful experience. Since then, we've carried on doing it just for one session a week. We have always done this as a public service. We initially started it as a morale booster for the garden and landscape industry during a very difficult time, and we've so loved doing it that we've carried on doing this. But our presenters give their time for free. We give our time for free. We do incur costs, administrative, technical, and sometimes for support staff, and we would very much appreciate the odd donation to help us keep going and help keep this a free service, which we'd very much like to do. So please go to our homepage, and down at the bottom there's a donate button, and we'll be very grateful. Thank you.
Yeah, it is one of those things. Just because it's edible doesn't mean to say it tastes nice.
I know, yes. Ground elder, no.
Oh, yes.
Oh, yes,
Yeah.
yeah. I tried to, that because of it's a sort of folklore name of goutweed. I actually tried to get my father to taste that because he used to suffer from gout, and he was having none of it.
No.
None of it.
Actually, I did have some very nice ground elder pecora a few years ago.
Really?
Maybe the deep frying somehow gives them some sort of taste that they lack otherwise.
Try that one. Yeah, definitely.
No, we've just one of my things here now in Portugal is lotuses. The opportunity to grow lotus, this kind of magical, symbolic, wonderful, beautiful plant. Anyway, we've got a new lotus pond, which is surrounded by little slips of Houtunia cordata.
Yeah.
Because the whole thing is, potentially edible. If lotus is grown at the most tremendous rate, and I can imagine the idea is to sort of thin them out every winter and eat the proceeds.
Yeah. Oh. Some of the other sort of culinary things. I mean, we're showing some of the pictures on here. We in this particular slides, these are our previous garden, and we were on a brook, a very fast flowing brook, and we had a ford that split the garden. Part of the garden was in Shropshire and part of it was in Worcestershire, so it was
right. Yeah.
And the dog is called Bruce. Spot the dog. He's in the middle of the barrow. That's Bruce.
Yes. Was this when you were at near Tenbury Wells?
This is when we were down the mill house.
This is 2 miles away in the next village. And this was quite difficult.
This is the new garden.
This is
our new garden up here.
The older garden was very wet garden, quite shady as well. Grew the symphytums incredibly well down there. And also we were able to grow fresh watercress because we had a runoff from our old
from our well.
Our well.
We had a spring well, and where the water overflowed out of the well, it was clean water, so we grew watercress.
That was quite unusual to have that, because when we opened that garden for 14 years for the National Garden Scheme,
of course,
and we did every Sunday then, because it had small parking space, and they would all come along, you know, people would come along and say, is that really real watercress? You know, it's quite an unusual thing for people to see it.
Yes.
That brook originally used to grow fresh watercress all in it, but it got polluted. Time killed it out, which was before our time, because we kept a really good eye on that brook.
Because you always have to be careful with watercress that you haven't got sheep upstream.
Yes, yes.
To be clean.
Liver flute. Yes, yes.
Yeah.
So now you were selling at shows for many years. Can you just sort of run through what's involved in doing one of the regional shows? I'm just thinking of something like Malvern or something where you. Yeah.
Malvern was our closest show. Really, it was the show that we did the most work with, and we would build a display for them, have the usual sort of selling side to it as well. But as time went on, we actually took a display outside as well. We had a selling place outside, and then when Rob got Fertile Fibre up, we had 3 selling pitches. He would have a selling pitch of Fertile Fibre, so it was a full-on show for us to do.
But also we did the spring show, but we did the summer one that was in June as well, which is now called the Royal Three Counties Show, and do the autumn one as well. So we would go to Malvern 3 times a year.
And Malvern Spring, that was always quite interesting, because, you know, we've just had a very wet, cold sort of start to spring, so everything's a little bit small, on the small side, and actually producing the show plants for that would be, you know, quite a challenge. And sometimes we can remember actually loading the lorry in snow. We were being snowed on as we loaded the lorry. Had torrential rain at Malvern, all been blistering hot, and one of our helpers had sunstroke.
In one show, the show when we had 3 stands with the Fertile Fibre as well, the plants got frosted on the Thursday night before the show in the lorry, and on Sunday, John, who used to help me with the Fertile Fibre, had to go home in the afternoon with sunstroke. And that was the same show.
Yes.
I think when you're doing shows, you know, the weather is your biggest sort of concern as to how it's going to pan out, you know. And we did everything very naturally, so we hadn't got lights to bring things on. So we hadn't got heat to bring things on, you know, and if it was a warm spring, we couldn't hold things back very easily, you know. So we, doing it the way we did it, with literally very simple means, made the job quite hard. You know, because you put here about a real slog. Yes, yeah, but the bonus of it, we've always said, is, you know, the actual being there at the show, selling your plants, having that camaraderie with but also the camaraderie with the other exhibitors. And we all of us exhibitors tend to say, you know, we're one big family, you know. And it really was like that in that time. You know, I think we had, when they first started, you know, a lot of help, didn't we?
Everybody helped everybody else there. I knew, you know, as the shows, there was a lot of exhibitors at some of these big shows. Any one person have a problem, there was always somebody there that could help them out. You know, there was always this sort of looking after and looking out for everybody, which was, you know, was really good. And like with yourself, like we met you at shows and we've stayed friends since. And
and that's one of the great things about the shows, including Chelsea, is that everyone, you know, there's this great atmosphere. People really do help each other. I mean, in a completely selfless and sort of immediate way. And it's also that opportunity to kind of we could have a lot of fun. I remember, I'm trying to remember his name. There's a guy who had a little nursery, sort of nursery, mostly doing alpines near somewhere in Wiltshire. Was it Will Harley? Does that ring a bell? Anyway, he had a fantastic sense of humour, and something the afternoon when things were beginning to kind of slacken down and the customers weren't actually fighting over your stuff anymore, and perhaps you were running out of stuff, hopefully, there's always that time to go around and see what other people were doing, and a chance to sort of exchange stories. And one of the favourite ones was always, what's the most stupid question you've been asked today? And there was always this guy who always seemed to have had the most idiotic questions. We used to laugh so much about, about the kind of the kind of show mentality. I think people go around these shows and they're going to get a bit kind of, it's difficult. So many different things to look at, and kind of people begin to lose it. So the clients begin to lose it a bit after a while, I think.
Yeah, but the thing is, like you say, they always keep their sense of humor. I did one plant that was a complete washout. We were literally flooded out, and halfway through the afternoon, a low-flying Hercules came over the show. The exhibitors ran out into the middle, waved his arms and said, "We're over here, save us." There's always somebody with a sense of humor on the showground.
Yes, yes. And then, of course, there's Chelsea. So tell us how you got invited to Chelsea.
Well, that came completely out of the blue, really did. We had no idea that we would ever go to Chelsea. And it was 1992.
Yeah.
And Mavis Sweetingham, who ran Chelsea, really, she really did run Chelsea. She rang up and just said, we've got a pitch. Would you like to come? And we said, she said, don't think about it. Would you like to come? And I said, yes, we'll come. Having no idea how
what it involves. Yeah.
This was January, and we got to suddenly get our act together and do Chelsea Flower Show. Now, the big thing about this, Noel, is that we had never even been as visitors. We'd never driven through those gates.
They were taking a punt, weren't they?
Oh, yes. And it was...
they must have been pretty desperate. At least they'd seen my stuff at RHS Westminster shows. At least I was a known quantity when she phoned. Here we go. She must have been really famous. We got in the corner.
Well, we'd actually, John Tilbury from the HEA, the Horticultural Exhibitors Association, had evidently said to Mavis, ring the Kim and Rob up, and see if they'll come. They're new to the game, sort of thing. Well, we weren't that new to the game, but anyway. But the thing was, we actually were quite late getting there, and we drove in with this old 7.5-ton curtain cider lorry and parked up with John Tilbury flapping away because he wondered where we'd got to, and started unloading these bright orange bread trays. We hadn't even got proper carriers. Wandered into the tent. You were partly set up. And we said, oh dear. So we've started setting it up. At that time, you could work through the night. So really kind to us. They let us stay in with the lorry, parked outside, that beautiful old marquee. And we just carried on working through the night with the NAFAS ladies. And then we thought, we've got to have a break. We've got to go and have something to eat. So we jumped into the back of the lorry, got a primer stove. Rob pumped up the primer stove and it burst into flames, and the whole of this curtain side lorry was glowing with these flames coming out of this little primer stove. And there's us like two headless chickens running up and down this thing, grabbing an old blanket that we'd taken to actually throw over us because we were sleeping in that lorry, and put the flames out. And we were nearly famous for actually burning the Grand Marquee down rather than actually exhibiting in the
Wow.
The security man on the outside could see the flames inside and the two bodies running about, because you could see through the curtain side of it once the flames started on that. He put his head round the corner and he went, "Are you two all right in there?"
And yeah, and then we actually slept the night on the showground. Now that would never be heard of now. They took pity on us, I think, and just said, because we didn't even get anything hot after then, we just because our primer stove had gone. But we then jumped back out again and carried on and finished the display completely off. And then the next morning we were woken up by them washing down Chelsea, ready for the dignitaries to come in and being kindly asked to remove our old 7.5 curtain onto Battersea Park.
So which we took to Battersea Park then, because we paid to be put the lorry in the lorry park, and we didn't realise that you weren't allowed to stay with the lorry, but we were sleeping in the back of it. So we had to make sure that whenever the park police went by, they didn't see us getting in and out the back of the lorry. So it did slip up, because we went out for a meal the one night, and when we came back, the park was locked. So we had to climb over the fence to get into the lorries.
We broke into Battersea Park.
You could have ended up sleeping rough, and I bet you wouldn't have been the first either.
No, I don't think we were.
I think I think sleeping in the back of that curtain cider was sleeping rough.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, yes.
Definitely. I mean, Chelsea was amazing that first time. We did it the next year, but we decided that until we could actually find some proper accommodation, it was too exhausting to not get proper sleep while you're doing Chelsea. But we went on from there, and we did displays for other people. We did the year 2000. We were asked by Birmingham City Council to do their major sort of display with them, and we worked with them on that display, which was really an incredible project for us to do, and the first time we'd ever worked with anything so big. And they were very, very supportive. And then in 2001
we did the Cottage Garden Society garden, which we built. We supplied a lot of the plants, but their members supplied plants as well, and we put it together for them. And then we went back to doing our own display in 2002, which we got a bit carried away with, and we did a display which was rather too big. But we got away with it in the end. We got a silver medal for that one. And then in 2003, we did a really unusual garden at Chelsea. It was called A Room for Wildlife, and we had to grow a lorry load of what everybody else would term as weeds. We grew all sorts of things for it. It was designed on Whitley Court, which is not far from here, which is was an old estate that burnt down in the 30s, and it's owned by English Heritage, and it's now open to the public. But the designer designed his garden on this as a falling down ruin, and we had to grow all of the plants to fit in with it. And there was one bit where he had a leaky drain pipe onto a bucket of nettles. But the nettles had to grow in a certain way. The bucket was an angle, so the bucket was faced into the wall. So the nettles. So I had to grow 10-litre pots of nettles all on an angle on the nursery.
Yes.
So I thought, this is mad. But that Chelsea, every night that week, on the start of Chelsea Flower Show, those nettles were on the titles going up on the little picture. I got a lot of stick from the exhibitors for my famous nettles. And it was nice
publicity, which is the main
because the garden, I think it got a silver medal as a show garden, but it was actually the People's Choice that year. They voted.
Really?
The People's Choice. And it was really, really unusual.
But it was the hardest garden to grow, because what happened is the wildlife actually moved into the shade tunnel where we were growing everything, and they started to eat it and start to make nests in it. And in the end, we had to raise it up on platforms so that we could carry on growing it to Chelsea Show Garden standard. So out of all of the gardens that we've ever sort of grown plants for, that has been the hardest one to do.
the picture you're looking at now is in there because that is the Chelsea Flower Show marquee, of which vehicles are not allowed in.
No,
So,
no.
and we managed to get our old 7.5 tonner in there. So we took a picture of it for posterity.
We then went on to do, other work for other gardens, and we produced lots of many Angelicas for Chelsea. That was sort of one of our trademarks. We would grow them in 25-litre pots. We had to keep them just below 8 feet because otherwise they would rub the top of the lorry. So that was quite sort of, demanding as time ran on.
And we were really pleased because one of our Angelicas got into the Linnaeus garden that was built I think 2007, 2008.
Yeah.
So we were really pleased that we actually had a plant that we'd grown in the Linnaeus garden.
Yeah. The picture that's on now is when we won the gold medal in 2006. It took us a long while to get a gold medal. I think it was because the naturalistic style really hadn't taken off in a way by this, but it was something that we really felt incredibly strong about, because we'd had lots of advice. If you do this, if you have clip box in, if you stylized it more, if you didn't mix everything up, then you get a better medal. But that was not what we were about. We wanted to show how you could grow these plants in a very naturalistic way. And this is what we did, and it did take us to 2006 to actually achieve, getting a gold medal. And the picture that's up now, this one was the biggest garden that we actually did ourselves, and a landscaper did all the landscaping with this, and this was for Malvern Autumn, and it was actually built for the cooking stage, and for the chefs to actually use. And this is how we got to know lovely Mark Diacono.
Oh, right. Oh, yes.
He was one of the people that day, and it was great because he came in and picked from the garden. He was with River Cottage at the time, and River Cottage chefs were coming. Gil Mellor, he was one of the chefs that was on there, and we actually built the garden for them to crop throughout the show. And that was the first time we'd ever been involved in something personally, rather than actually supplying designers with plants for show gardens.
Right, yeah. So now perhaps you should tell us about the new garden.
Yeah.
So
this is the old garden that you see at the moment, we on this very small, well, I say small, it was 2 acres in all, garden that was very, very demanding. We inherited a lot of ground alder in here, a lot of bindweed, and because we were National Garden Scheme garden at the time, it was made it quite difficult gardening for us. This particular picture is going over to the Worcestershire side of the garden. When we had visitors to this garden, they would sort of say to us, well, it'll be really nice when you've got it under control. So we said, well, actually, that's not what we're achieving. No. So when we went to the new garden, we faced with the big hop picking building opposite, because you've been, Noel, you've been in the house.
Yes.
We live in a hop kiln, and we actually didn't garden for a long while because we had to get rid of so much detritus. There was an enormous amount of old farmyard stuff, that had to go, and that took quite a while. And then the building had to be adapted to build the garden, because we didn't want to take that building down. So we ended up with,
you can see some of the detritus.
Yeah, this is the detritus that we had. A lot of stuff had been just dumped here. Neighbours had come and dumped things here. There were things like the old Volvo in the garden that we eventually found the neighbour that had left that there 15 years previously. There was a lot of building rubble in the garden as well. The site was just quite hard work for somebody. The person sat next to me, he did an enormous amount of clearing. what we didn't want to do was get rid of it. We
Mm.
wanted to use it. We wanted to use it in parts of the garden. There you go. There's the Volvo.
Yeah, but we couldn't use the Volvo. The
No.
owner of the Volvo, we did finally find for them to take it away.
But the thing with it was we wanted to use all of the rubble that was actually left over, because we wanted to build these banks around the edge of the garden, A, to use up a lot of the material, and B, to make a bank that was going to be useful against the prevailing wind, because we get a lot of wind here and we just needed a buffer to do that. So these beautiful green banks that we've got now around the garden are actually where all the rubble is. And then we started to build the garden where the old hop picking side was. But then India and her partner Christopher said, you really need to take that big old shed down, which had been where Fertile Fibre was. So that actually went to Fertile Fibre. Matthew owns that. He recycled. That was recycled. We kept one of the silos that we had, because we wanted to turn that into somewhere.
That was Kim's garden shed.
It was going to be my garden shed, but it then got a different life. As you can see, you know, there was enormous amounts involved here. We had enough concrete to land 747s on. And then we ended up with this, where we built lovely pond, and the hedge that you can see in front of you is a Lanista nitidus hedge, which is now clipped really beautifully by Rob. We were able to grow these wonderful roses, Kifsgate, a rambling rector up the garden. Where the part of the rubble was, where that this is where that Volvo was, this picture here, and this is where we left the substrate down and grew all of these well-drained plants on here, you know, the Thymuses, the Eryngiums, the Echinopsis and such like. This is looking back at that corn bin. Now that corn bin became actually the pump house for the pond. The pond is a natural swimming pond. We actually swim with newts, which is really interesting. A little like little Loch Ness monsters that come swimming along by the side of you. We planted it very naturalistically with many different things that, you know, at the front here we've got Lobelia tuber, we've got Aruncus horatio, at the back we've got Nepeta parnassica, the Greek Nepeta. We grow lots of different types of Nepeta in the garden. It really likes it. This is all on a lot of the rubble. We've hardly did anything with the soil. We'd had a little bit of compost that we'd got from down in our big compost heap, but basically we were growing on that rubble that we broke down. We kept parts of the building because that particular part of the building there, which was part of a lean-to shed, is actually gives us a little bit of shade on the other side, but also it's a good wind buffer as well, because of the wind that we get there. And we get, you know, lovely skies that add to the garden. You know, it's very atmospheric, and we get hot picking mists that we call that come across the valley as well. Generally, the garden stands up to quite a lot of weather. You know, there's not a great deal of protection around it.
Great. So now I understand your daughter India has gone into the floristry business.
Yes. She's into her 10th year now, Noel.
Really? Yeah.
She grows an awful lot of her own plants, and as we take away the plants that we've got left, she's actually adding to the plants, because she grows a large amount of her own flowers, which she plants out into beds as well. But her big thing is irises.
Yeah, you were saying about the Pacific Coast iris, isn't it? Especially, yeah.
And she has built up rather a wonderful collection of them, and is adding to that collection all of the time. And now she's starting to breed her own varieties, and she's getting very excited because this year will be the first time she'll see the fruits of her labour of breeding plants. So, And this is somebody that once said to us at 16, I never want to have anything to do with plants ever again. I'm done with this, mother. But we're
Right.
we're extremely happy with the fact that she's doing this. Yeah.
So why is she focused particularly on Pacific Coast Iris?
She absolutely adores them. She loves their flamboyance, you know, their colours. She does have a really good eye for colour. She's art trained, and so she, you know, if you have a look at some of her work that she's done, but she wanted a flower that was a statement flower that was different, you know, and her arrangements are only for a very short time, so the fact that they're short-lived is of no real consequence in her work, but it's I think she just likes the challenge of working with them as well, because actually building something from that particular color frame that plant that flower is giving you know, it's I love that particular plant.
Yeah. Now we've got a couple of questions come up. Did you get rid of your bindweed?
Do we get rid of our bindweed?
How
We moved.
Yes.
We moved.
We left it behind.
We left it behind. We moved.
Okay, you moved, yes. Yeah.
We don't have it here. We moved.
I mean, if you keep on digging it up, you will eventually get rid of it.
Yeah,
We that depends a bit on your sort. On those Irish ditching spades, I think it's really useful. You know, those really sort of long, narrow.
Yeah. Our problem, Noel, was actually in the foundations of the wall, and
I see. Yes.
And the ground elder was in the foundations of the cottage, which was interesting. You know, so we could only do so much, really.
Yes. And can you give the name of the Greek Nepeta again?
Parnassica.
Parnassica. So Nepeta Parnassica.
Yeah.
Okay.
It grows really tall. It grows to 1.8 meters. It's
It's big.
Yeah.
Very big.
Yes. Great. So I think people have enjoyed our stories.
Good. I'm glad.
That's fantastic. Beautiful story.
Yeah.
Great. So thank you for joining us. Hopefully I'll come back and see you next time I'm over.
That would be really nice.
Actually, Ireland. What are your plans for retirement? I mean, you say this year is the last year of the nursery. So what are you going to be doing? Apart from gardening, of course.
Apart from gardening,
we've still got to grow a few plants.
Yeah. We're still growing a few plants. We want to sort of carry on growing plants for the garden, obviously, but we've also got this big project with this nature recovery on the rest of the land.
All right. Yeah.
And we have this swathe of land between it's about an acre that comes up the drives and round that we've kept, that we've got the actual very wild on the one side of the fence, and then we've got this other swathe that Rob and I are going to plant up with a lot.
It's the barrier between the nature recovery and the garden.
Yeah, and we're going to be working on that and add into that. So that's going to be taking some of the time. Lots of seed trays on the go at the moment with that.
What can I ask? What plants are you working with to do that? What kind of plants are you planting at the moment?
We've planted up bird's-foot trefoil. We've got samfoil. We've got
samfoil, meadowsweet, oxeye daisies, teasels, dropwood,
burdocks, you know, all of that kind of thing.
Yeah.
What else have we got going in there? We're letting like pimpernel grow in there.
Yeah, we want scarlet pimpernel because it's native around here.
Yeah.
So
we've got a white herb robert as well that we were going to get going in there as well.
Yeah. Which has always been said that is a Shropshire plant.
Yeah.
Really?
Shropshire is only 2 miles up the road, so we get away with it.
Yeah, we're going to, but so generally, you know, that kind of thing that's going to be that is going to grow here. You know, we don't want to be struggling with things.
Yeah, we've grown a lot of betony to try and get
Yeah.
that going as well.
Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah, so we're not
Nice.
anytime soon, really.
So,
And Rob's at Hurst on Monday.
yeah,
So
I'm doing a little plant fair up at Hurst.
All right. Okay. Yeah.
So, and the explanation for the pigs,
Oh yes.
they are the plough.
they're the plan.
They're grubbing up brambles and
Perfect.
stuff. Yes.
Most of the nature recovery project is natural regeneration. So
Right.
we need them to break up the grass so that the tree seeds and the wildflower seeds can grow in it.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Great. Good. Well, thank you very much for your time, and been nice to sort of have a reminisce. And
Yes, it has.
good luck with your future host nursery life, and look forward to meeting up with you again.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks so
Thanks.
much.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you both very much. Thanks.
Thank you. Bye-bye. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.
We hope that you are enjoying this recording from Garden Masterclass's Thursday Garden Chat programme. We started doing this in April 2020 during the first COVID lockdown, when we did it 5 days a week for 2 months, which was a wonderful experience. Since then, we've carried on doing it just for one session a week. We have always done this as a public service. We initially started it as a morale booster for the garden and landscape industry during a very difficult time, and we've so loved doing it that we've carried on doing this. But our presenters give their time for free. We give our time for free. We do incur costs, administrative, technical, and sometimes for support staff, and we would very much appreciate the odd donation to help us keep going and help keep this a free service, which we'd very much like to do. So please go to our homepage, and down at the bottom there's a donate button, and we'll be very grateful. Thank you.